of current events unless it's related to, GMOs and chemtrails and our health. But this situation in Paris with the bombing concerned me after my intern Vanessa Benjamin and I had lunch the other day, and she was asking me some questions, and I went into the whole history of colonization and France's involvement in colonizing some of the Arab nations like Algeria specifically, and then the influx of immigration from Algeria to the French motherland, because once they colonize a country, then they become, apparently, they become a citizen of France. I don't know that all the colonizers did that, but I know that France did do that with Algeria. And they were trying to use that citizenship to get the Algerians to acquiesce and to continue to allow the occupation. But they fought bitterly in the 1960s to win their independence, and it was a very brutal war. And so there's still a lot of that lingering resentment of the destruction of their country. Algeria is very beautiful, or was at that time. And I feel that today there is still that resentment with the youth that are now living in Paris. And so I think it would be easy for them to be recruited by groups like ISIS. And Vanessa did some really great research into who's actually behind it. So we decided we would do a show today and bring Kim Michaels in and ask questions about the spiritual significance of what is going on, not just with the bombing in France, but the whole Middle East connection, because Kim, I know we've said, and I've heard I believe it was the Ascended Masters who said that we can't really have peace until we have peace in the Middle East, and it's so volatile there. It's really important that we talk about that today. So, Kim, I'll let you open up with that particular statement about the significance of the Middle East and trying to calm the situation there when it's constantly being stirred up by the world powers.
Well, as you know, the Ascended Masters are saying that there are people on Earth who have embodied here, but they have come from many different other planetary systems.
Yes.
And they have said for a long time, not just through me, but through other messengers as well, that there is a certain group of people or souls that have embodied in the Middle East, and they came from another planet that they themselves blew up and destroyed through war technology.
Yeah.
And the Masters have said that these souls have kept warring ever since they came to this planet, and they are still doing it, and there has only been a very limited change in their state of consciousness.
Wow. Well, that's interesting, Kim, because I read the entire volume that Zachariah Sitchin did on the whole history of that same group, probably, that you're talking about, who came to Earth and who were very warlike. He calls them the Anunnaki. And they definitely blow up whatever.
Yeah, it's like their main means of like...
And they're very proud of being warriors, and they see us as a planet that they have conquered and that they really are our rulers. So that it's interesting that that's a very similar story to Zachariah Sitchin's set of books.
Yeah, not necessarily exactly the same.
Yeah, but very similar.
Yeah, the Ascended Masters actually called them the laggards because they are lagging behind the evolution of most of the other souls on the planet.
Yeah, I read that in that 1,000-book volume, and I love that term laggards because so many of my students are laggards, and I know so many laggardy people.
Yeah, it's the whole planet, pretty much.
Okay, so that's very that's very significant that you brought that up, Kim. So when you're dealing with a warrior consciousness, and I would have to say it's not just in the Middle East, but you know you have world leaders that are shouting and pushing for war that are not in the Middle East. They're not third world countries. So they seem to be like primary instigators in a lot of this. Historically, they've done that, and history has a tendency to repeat itself. What, did we lose Kim?
No, I just wasn't sure whether you were asking me or Vanessa. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One thing that kind of confuses me about this whole thing is I know that when a lot of blood is spilled in certain areas, it opens up different vortexes for the dark forces, and that was kind of the first thing that I thought of when all this stuff was happening, because there were 6 different places where they actually did these incidents. There were 2 bombings, and then there were shootings in other places, just regular places in the suburbs of Paris. Yeah. And it's obviously created such a it's fear-mongering to like almost the highest extent, because it's not just like, oh, they didn't do the Eiffel Tower. Right. They didn't go to the Arc de Triomphe. They actually just went into places where regular people were minding their own business, and they Well, that reminded me very much of the actual Battle of Algiers. I saw the documentary, and that was very strategic, the way that they would go into cafes and restaurants and airports, and they would set off bombs, strategically, where they would go off like an hour, ahead of a bomb over here, but the dates were very significant. So when you know history, it definitely will repeat itself. Yeah. But Kim, what's your take on the whole bloodbath? My concern is the fear-mongering, but at the same time, I'm really, really impressed that people haven't gone into this whole 9/11 consciousness, which, the Hegel dialectic is often used, where you create a crisis and then you make the people demand a solution, which is the very solution that you already had in mind, and then you implement the solution, which there's been this constant push for a one world police, the New World Order, to control the entire population of the planet. So, Kim, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Ascended Masters have been saying for a long time that the problem on this planet is that so many people are in the dualistic state of consciousness, which is what you were talking about. All you need to do is create some kind of provocation, and then you can be pretty sure that they're going to react to violence with more violence. Yes. And then you create a spiral, and you can pretty much, those who are ruthless enough, they can pretty much determine where the evolution of society is going to go. And the irony of this is that America calls itself a Christian nation. Yes. And the essence of Jesus' teaching about turning the other cheek was exactly to break that dualistic spiral and the Hegelian dialectic. Yes. So that instead of react as they think you're going to react, namely with more violence, you react with nonviolence, and therefore you don't accelerate their spiral, and then they don't know what to do.
I agree. Yeah. And Kim, honestly, and Vanessa, I want your take on this as well, because I really stay away from the news. It's like
I usually do too, but this one, it just kind of, I was like, what? When I first saw it? So
but the news gets on my nerves. It's like when I listen to it, I'm very, very disappointed in journalism today and how they will not even tell the whole story. They don't even investigate it. They just do this fear-mongering, and it really insults my intelligence, to watch it. But at the same time, I'm very grateful that we have independent sources. And you're a journalism major, and you did a great job researching this and bringing this topic to the show. So high five for you.
Thank you.
As a college student. But Kim, I'm feeling like there's light at the end of the tunnel, because there wasn't that reaction that they were looking for.
And they really did try. Like they had all these, they're like, this isn't working, we don't know what to do. And I'm like, really?
Like, ask us what to do, and then we'll do it.
You know what I mean? They're like saying, well, they have these black apps or something like that, where they're unable to like hack into it, and the password keeps changing. I'm like,
Anonymous
there are regular people who can literally get your bank information, but you guys can't hack some guys, like really? And that's why I was like, okay, well, this sounds fishy.
Yes.
And I do appreciate that. Like, yeah, I know there is a little bit of like fear going on, definitely in Paris,
of course,
and all that stuff. But yeah, a lot of people really aren't necessarily like, yeah, we need to go to war. Even I've noticed some of like the candidates are like, well, yeah, okay, we'll do that, but we're not going to lead. The U.S. isn't going to lead the fight, which, of course, they're already in it because they're actually supplying money to the Islamic State and its different factions and stuff like that, along with Israel and that whole, I guess, NATO.
Well, and what's interesting is you said that the article you sent me on the research about who's actually behind it, there are tons of, independent researchers out there. Thank God for the independent press.
So it's actually really easy to find the information if you just know just who's really behind ISIS. You know what I mean? And literally, you get so many
independent.
Yeah,
and it's really just critical thinking. It's like common sense. So Kim, that kind of gives me hope. I mean, what are your thoughts about the hopefulness that people aren't buying into this the way that they did with September 11th?
Well, I agree with you. I think it is positive that many people are actually beginning to say, why do we always have to respond with violence to violence? And I'm taking solace in the fact that the Ascended Masters are very, very good at gauging where the collective consciousness is at and where it's headed. And the very fact that Mother Mary brought out this book this year, Help the Ascended Masters Stop War, gives me hope that the Masters know that there is a growing awareness that can really galvanize people to seek a spiritual solution. And that's, of course, what Mother Mary gives us in that book, where she talks about what you are saying, that fear is one of the major causes of war.
Sure.
Because sometimes people go to war because they're afraid of what's going to happen if they don't.
Yes.
And so as long as you can build that spiral of fear, it accelerates. And what we who are spiritually inclined can do is to use these spiritual tools to break that spiral.
Yes.
So that it doesn't accelerate beyond control.
And well, that's an excellent point, Kim, and I want to add that we will be, that's the next project we're going to be going into when I get back from Europe, is your book, Kim, on stopping war, because I think there's really nothing more important than, getting it out there in the collective consciousness that it's a possibility. First, the people have to believe that it's possible to have a world without war, even though historically that during the course of human history, we've not been successful with that. But it doesn't mean that we can't change that.
I think maybe we kind of have to start with the war that we have within ourselves, because I think it does reflect in the collective.
Outwardly.
And I was doing it's called the Rosary for Overcoming a Spiritual Crisis. It's an Archangel Michael Rosary.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I kind of got this hit where I'm like, oh, okay, well, in order for us to really take back our authority, we have to really not have that fear. Yeah. And in that peace, that's where we actually take our power back, because you can't say, oh, I'm angry at these people, Ascended Masters, can you consume this, all of this war. It's like you have to really be in a place where you don't respond to it in a way.
And that's what we're trying to do with a show like this. After commercial break, Kim, we're going to have our message from the Ascended Masters, and let's hear what they have to say about this situation in Paris. You're listening to Divine Love Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Parthenia Grant, my co-host, Kim Michaels, and my beloved Vanessa Benjamin, my intern. And we're talking about the crisis in Paris right now. Okay, we're back with our message from the Ascended Masters with Kim Michaels as the designated messenger. Kim?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I was just waiting for the music.
All right.
I am the Ascended Master Mother Mary, and I am grateful for this opportunity to comment on these last events. My beloved, I have given you many tools and many teachings about the causes of war in the book, Help the Ascended Masters Stop War. I obviously cannot go into all of them here, but I am concerned that you understand the role of fear. Fear is a major cause of war and has been throughout history, because when people are afraid that they will be killed, then you have a suspension of the normal instinct not to kill other human beings. I explain this at length in the book, that you all have an instinct not to kill members of your own species. But this can be suspended when you are afraid that other people will kill you. And this is precisely what has been used countless times to create this downward spiral where fear leads to more fear. Rumors and conspiracy theories and this and that crop up, and there's no proof, and there doesn't need to be any proof, because once people have crossed a threshold of being afraid, they don't ask for proof. They don't use common sense. They just go into a stronger and stronger reaction of fear until they demand that something be done. It is a great concern to me, and quite frankly a great disappointment, that the French president declared that France is now at war. Wow. I am sure in the United States you will know that France has often been not exactly the country that supported the United States. And this has in many cases been warranted. But now apparently France has shifted its attitude and finds itself needing to declare that it is at war. This is, of course, in part because there are very few Ascended Master students in France, very few people giving our rosaries and decrees to break these spirals of fear that have been growing for some time. But it is also because France has gotten itself into a position where it is misinterpreting the liberties upon which its democracy is based. I am not here defending that Arab women wear certain types of clothing, but I am saying that when France is claiming that in order to defend religious freedom, it needs to forbid some of its citizens from deciding for themselves what they are going to wear in public, then you have taken the principles of liberty too far. In a free democratic nation, women, as all people, should be free to choose on their own what they wear. This should not be a concern of the government, regardless of whether that clothing is religious or not. So you see how complex these problems can be, and how easy it is to take a true principle such as freedom and liberty and yet turn it on its head so it is now used to create conflict. This, of course, applies to the United States as well, as I also talk about in my book. You cannot force democracy on other nations, my beloved. If it does not come as a result of an evolution in the collective consciousness, then democracy is an impossibility, as the invasion in Iraq should have proven to American leadership and to the American people. Yet so far, this lesson has not been taken to heart, for there is a more and more strained attempt to defend the United States actions instead of being willing to look in a mirror and say, we need to learn from this so that we do not repeat the same mistakes. And regardless of what we have said about the people in the Middle East who are behind, you cannot force other people to evolve faster than they can. And that is why, as I have said before, and as I also say in the book, you need to let people decide on their own and let them take the time it takes for them to evolve into freedom and democracy.
All right. Thank you, Kim Michaels and Mother Mary. That hit the nail on the head. So after commercial break, we'll come back and discuss that dictation from Mother Mary and what we can take home from that in terms of doing our part to help France and the Middle East. You're listening to Divine Love Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Parthenia Grant. With me is Vanessa Benjamin in studio and Kim Michaels. You can check them out at transcendenceToolbox.com. Okay, we're back, continuing in our discussion about the situation in France with the bombings and discussing the dictation that we just received from Mother Mary. What struck me, Kim and Vanessa, is, again, what I said earlier, the repetition of history. When Mother Mary pointed out that the French government was now dictating how women should dress, and that was one of the problems in Algeria when when the French had colonized Algeria before the revolution. They prohibited them from practicing their religious freedom, from marrying, having public ceremonies. So that it seems like France didn't learn from the battle with Algeria, and that it just doesn't work. And even as a parent, that if you tell a kid not to do a teenager not to do something,
midriff, how about no shirt?
Exactly. They're going to do the exact opposite of whatever you tell them to do, or they're going to dig in, a lot deeper. And Mother Mary was absolutely right that, if you're a democratic nation, you really allow people to think and make decisions for themselves, in particular about the way that they want to dress.
Yeah, and it's kind of similar with what we're doing in the U.S., where we have this whole freedom of religion, where you're really extreme with it, and you're like a very conservative Christian, and then freedom from religion, where you're a complete atheist, and you don't want to see anything that has anything to do with any type of religion, like anywhere. And there's just this there are these
polar
like
opposites.
The
duality.
So one wants to restrict people's rights, and then one wants to completely eradicate religion and like kind of put down
any religion,
which is they're both kind of wrong.
well, no, I would agree absolutely. There doesn't seem to be a real middle ground yet here in this country. Kim, I'd like to pull you in on the discussion.
Yeah, I think it's obvious that the Founding Fathers meant to create a country where people could be free to practice any religion they wanted. And that really means that the government should stay out of the area of religion and leave it to the people.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the whole reason why people came to America from Europe, was because of religious persecution. And I just find it very, like, if you look at the situation at the school, very conservative, Catholic, based school, but didn't want me teaching and allowing, like Muslim students to have a say in class, or metaphysics or spirituality. Oh, that was a huge issue that they had with me, was my openness and embracing, all of the cultures there. And the huge attack that I got was, what are you doing, bringing in all this metaphysics and spirituality, new age, kind of stuff. And of course, I was talking about the history of the Catholic Church. And that was a real problem.
Nobody wants to hear about that, I guess.
But it's like the big issue in me leaving campus was that there was no free speech. I mean, there literally was like a little square, and it was called the Free Speech area. And it was tiny. And if you got outside of that
speech
free
box.
speech zone, you could not speak.
Wow. Which is weird.
Am I in America?
Right.
Seriously?
I mean, that's its whole little nation.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
but it's sort of a microcosm of the big macro.
That's true.
You know, and then when students were getting attacked for asking questions, you know, students got expelled for being reporters and questioning the administration. Literally, you know, got expelled, and the whole group got disbanded because of the persecution. So, I mean, this is America.
I mean, the good thing is that from what I've been seeing at my universities, they actually do support people who just like if you want to protest about something, like, all right, you guys have your thing.
Thank God.
You know, because I think they're mostly afraid of being looked at as we're an institution of higher learning
That's
and we don't
oppressing.
Support freedom.
Yeah.
So they don't.
Well,
want
that's
any of
good
that.
to hear.
Yeah.
Yay, Cal State.
Yeah.
But Kim, that has been a big concern of mine. Living in a so-called democratic nation is the crackdown on free speech, like even on the internet. You know, any words that you use are being tracked. You know, keystrokes, and it's sort of like the word police. Will come after you.
Yeah, and it's a very big concern. I think it's one of the major problems we're facing. And of course, it's one of those situations, again, with a Hegelian dialectic, you know. You have for centuries had societies in Europe and elsewhere where there was a small tyrannical government that clamped down on free speech. And then all of a sudden you create nations that have free speech, but it wasn't really until the internet came into the picture that we could fully exercise our free speech.
Right.
And so right now you have a situation where the power elite is scrambling to figure out what to do with this.
Yeah.
And they are obviously trying to use the principles of Hegel to create a situation where it seems like they need to clamp down on free speech in order to counteract terrorism.
Well,
and it's just an excuse.
Yeah. Go. Well, you know, let me say very quickly, Vanessa, because that is a concern that I have, is how the government is using the internet now to come up with an excuse to control the internet. Because we have these terrorists that are using Twitter and they're using, social media to tweet and, get their message out there. And it's just another way to stop free speech and to stop people from organizing to change the status quo.
Yeah, and I've noticed even in Canada where there's a specific
where they're recruiting
in Calgary, Canada, where they're actually recruiting people to go over there. And it's not just, I mean, there was a kid who converted to Islam and then
But you said that your research showed that they're promising them like a wonderland or something.
Yeah, like their messages is to tell them that this is an Islamic like Disneyland or like you're going to come over here, you're going to be a part of a brotherhood if you feel like you're left out, because these people, they do feel isolated and they feel disconnected from pretty much anywhere that they go. Yeah. So if you compile that with just this, a lot of people who have, I guess, been going over there might have possible mental illness going on as well. So and the whole issue of suicide is.
Remember that was also something that I found very important to address in class was that sense of not having any meaning. Yeah. And so that made people just not want to live. And you pointed out very cogently in the little blog that you wrote that recruiting kids like that who are kind of misfits and they don't fit in and they're looking for a purpose, but that is no different than joining a gang.
Yeah, because that's literally what they do.
Yeah.
I interviewed the poet laureate of Los Angeles last year, and he said that the reason why he joined a gang was because he felt like he was isolated because it was
people want to belong.
And it was like back in the 1950s, and he didn't really speak a lot of English. He lived in a mostly Latino community where they were kind of segregated. At schools, they didn't feel like they,
was that Luis Rodriguez?
Yeah. And then
I taught his son. He's an amazing writer. Yeah.
And then they literally felt like he felt like a misfit in his own family
and marginalized in society.
So then you get this you get these people saying, we're going to give you power, we're going to give you money, we're going to give you weapons, and you're going to have women.
And you're going to have a brotherhood, sisterhood.
And you're going to be a part of something. There's a purpose. Yeah. And especially if there are people who don't necessarily know the Quran all the way through.
Oh, yeah.
They are the ones who really are targeted by ISIS in the West because they don't know that.
Well, and it's no different than fundamentalist Christians who use the Bible against people who don't read the Bible.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, Kim, it boils down to, I think, young people needing a sense of purpose and finding meaning in life, which is something that we as adults, I know I've worked very, very hard with you and thousands of other students to help you guys find a sense of a productive sense of meaning and purpose. And when students find that, there's no reason to be depressed.
Yeah, and that's what saved me, really. Like, I know I'm here to do a specific, I have my own divine plan.
And you have gifts and abilities, and you can share them with the world.
And it's okay. Like, I have my own thing. I don't have to worry about what someone else is doing. You know, I'm good.
And it causes you to be constructive versus destructive.
Yeah.
So, Kim, I'd like for you to comment on that.
Yeah, I think it really is the tragedy of our age, you know, and I said earlier that it's ironic that America calls itself a Christian nation and uses violence, but it's equally ironic that there are so many people in the West that are atheists or secularists, and they are looking at this violence in the Middle East and say, oh, but this is all done by Muslims. It proves again the fallacy of religion. But the reality is that what you're talking about, the lack of purpose in the West, is mostly created by the secular people and the atheists.
That's true.
Because there is only one solution to finding purpose in life, and that is to have some form of spirituality. I'm not saying religion, but I'm saying some form of universal spirituality that gives you a sense, like Vanessa said, you have a plan for your life. There's a purpose for you being here, and it's what you chose before you came into embodiment.
Yeah. And, you know, that was why I felt so strongly about bringing Jose Munoz onto the show with the 6-sun calendar, because it combines all of the 23 calendars for the next 26,000-year cycle. And what struck me so strongly about that calendar is that in one reading, in a 3-minute reading, it just, you know, zeroes in on your divine plan and what you came here to do, what your gifts and abilities are. And I believe very, very strongly that every person on the planet has a right to know that. You know, that once you know, oh my, so that's why I'm this way, then you have a construct, you know, to work around. And that's part of my mission here on the planet, is to help people really find their way and to open up their eyes to what's going on, which is why I changed the title to that little short documentary I'm doing. Open up your eyes.
And I have like a question about like the whole karmically and like what is it that we, especially the U.S., because we're involved in this, what do we need to learn from this situation? Because I feel like maybe because I guess there are people who want to bring in this whole new world order,
of course, and
to be a savior, and we as a collective, and we as a collective are looking for saviors outside of ourselves, and we're unwilling to save ourselves, so we're almost susceptible.
This
I feel like it could get to an extreme where it could be that way if we don't wake up and save ourselves.
So your question for Kim is what?
Yeah, is that like what's going on right now? Like what's the spiritual lesson for us to actually learn from all this, France and just the West in general?
Well, I think you're right that there is a certain lesson to be learned there, and I think the lesson is simply this: freedom works. And that is what the United States was founded upon, okay? Give people freedom, and then they're going to choose the right thing. I was at a lecture the other night with an expert here in Denmark who talked about Islamic women's liberation in Islamic countries. And he was pointing out that the only reason why we can even talk about this topic is that there are so many Muslims that have come to the West where suddenly they have gotten the freedoms that are guaranteed by Western democracies. And now they have been able to create a concept of women's rights in Muslim countries that has forced a dialogue, because just the fact that the men are so anxious to deny this still means they are forcing a dialogue.
Sure.
And so I think it's very, very simple for the United States. Don't go out with military might and force people in other countries to change. Allow people from those countries to come to the United States, give them the freedoms that are in the Constitution, and allow those freedoms to work. Because once people taste freedom, they will want it.
Sure.
And it's very simple. You can just ask yourself, do I believe in the principles upon which the United States was founded? And if I do, then allow them to work. Don't try to force them. Don't try to control. You don't need to do that if you believe in what the country is founded on.
Wow, that's so powerful, Kim, because that's one of the things that I really stand on, and I stood very firmly at the college on that. And when they were violating academic freedom, freedom of speech, the right to protest, I couldn't be there. You know, I can't stay in an environment that is, you know, actively suppressing that while saying, you know, we support it, but at the same time, all of the actions are polar opposite. That whole doublespeak, the Orwellian doublespeak, I can't deal.
And you know, you can apply that to Christianity as well. If you really believe in the principles upon which Christianity is founded, you would never use violence, just turn the other cheek.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, Kim, history has proven, look at the people who came to America, our founding fathers. Who were they? They were debtors, you know, who had been, you know, released from debtors' prison. They were indentured servants who, you know, for 7 years were servants in order to pay their passage to come here. And they were undesirables, prisoners that were just dumped here. And once they were given the freedom to actually, you know, have land and do something different, they left, you know, being criminals behind.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, people don't just wake up or as a kid say, I want to grow up to be a kidnapper.
Yeah.
You know, I want to grow up to be a rapist. You know,
Yeah.
the environment encourages and shapes that.
You don't have enough options,
Yeah.
pretty much.
That's a really good point, Parthenia, because we forget today just how trapped the people of Europe were before the founding of the United States, and how little opportunities they had to improve their own lives.
Exactly.
And that is exactly what the United States gave them. And it also applies to what we talked about earlier about the young people who can be recruited by ISIS because they don't have a sense of purpose. They also just need an opportunity.
I agree, and they just need some direction and leadership, you know, positive leadership, intelligent leadership, conscious leadership. You're listening to Divine Love Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Parthenia Grant, with my co-host Kim Michaels and my intern Vanessa Benjamin, and we're talking about solutions to reacting to incidents that are designed to get us to want to go to war and to keep war going on this planet, and how we can stop it. Okay. Okay, we're back wrapping this up on Divine Love Talk. And Vanessa, you had one final question for Kim?
Yeah, so because I kind of realized that it's the issue within ourselves is actually
a mirror of peace.
So how do we find peace within ourselves?
Okay, Kim.
Well, that's again what the whole universal spiritual teaching is about. What is missing from religion, most religions today, is the concept of a path where you are systematically raising your state of consciousness by looking at precisely what you're talking about, the things in your psychology that take away your inner peace. And that's what a real universal path does. And I think that's the only real solution to it. And that's why I think it is so essential to get the public debate out of this Hegelian dialectic it's been in between the fundamentalist religious people on one side and the fundamentalist atheists on the other side.
Yeah, and this reacting to unconscious reaction to these incidents that are designed specifically to get people upset and to get people fear-based. I think the solution to peace is to, whenever you find yourself reacting to something, to sit still and ask yourself, your higher self, is, what's really going on here? Is what I'm hearing true? And does it ring true inside? Because that's how I get all of my answers. I listen to a lot of the stuff and I go, that doesn't sound right. Yeah. Okay, and you have that ability yourself, very strongly, Vanessa, to go, something just doesn't sound right. And you just, actually showed yourself the solution by doing your own research. You set me down, you asked me questions, I filled in the history that you didn't have, and then from you getting that information, you were able to ask better questions. Yeah. And I think, at the end of the day, we just have to learn how to ask better questions. Yeah. Kim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. And I talked earlier about the laggards that have been embodying on this planet and created a lot of the havoc in the Middle East. But the reason they were allowed to embody it in this planet was that the people who were on the planet before had already gone into the dualistic mindset. And that's what we really need to get beyond. And if you look at the real principles of Jesus, of the Buddha, and even to a large degree Muhammad, they were telling people to get beyond this dualistic mindset.
Yeah. And what's interesting is Muhammad gave women incredible rights during his time, and the treatment of women, he let them own property, they could divorce, and things regressed after his death. So I just think it's very tragic what happens to a lot of religions after the religious leader dies. And people really need to study for themselves and learn how to think critically and to ask better questions. And question everything. Yeah, and question what we're saying. This whole show, this whole show is about bringing you a different perspective and then letting you have another option to think about and then go and do further research and make your own decisions. Make a conclusion instead of just attacking that, because what that person is saying is different means it's wrong. No, it means you need to go and do some more research and find out the answers for yourself. They're all within you.
Yeah.
And Vanessa, I want to thank you for bringing up this discussion and the idea of us doing the show. Kim, I'm so grateful to you and to Mother Mary and the Ascended Masters that have been showing up to help us add more value to this show so that we can be a voice for peace. We can be a voice for reason.
And unconditional love.
Yes, and unconditional love right here at CRN on Divine Love Talk. You've been listening to Dr. Parthenia Grant, Vanessa Benjamin, and Kim Michaels. You can find Divine Love Talk on Facebook and Kim Michaels at Transcendence Toolbox, and send us, emails with questions and ideas about future shows at divinelovetalk@gmail.com, and we will accommodate you. Thank you for listening. We'll be back after my vacation with Kim's book on war. Hey, I think we offered some, pretty... and so this one I'm going to have...
Okay, I just have a quick question.
Because it's very...
Parthenia, it sounds like we're not going to do live shows for the next several weeks. Is that right?
That's who they're targeting, pretty much. And then it follows...
Oh, okay. All right. Oops. Hold on. Put my earphones on. Okay, Kim, I had to put my headphones back on.
That's fine. I just want to clarify. can you send me an email when we're going to do the next live show? Because it sounds like we're not going to do it for the next 3 or 4 weeks, right?
Yeah, that's very true, and I will do that. But so in the meantime, see, what I did is I pre-recorded 2 of the shows, and then Dr. Sarah is going to do 2 of them, but you will either need to email the Ascended Master message in a week to be added
for 2 shows.
For 2 shows.
Right.
And then after that we'll be back on live. So
this Monday we have a pre-recorded show.
This show we did today is going to be aired on Monday because it's timely. And then I'll talk to Dr. Sarah, and then I'll email you and fill you